I want to welcome you all to this IAB Canada webinar, which is going to be about digital and cross-media highlights that I really was impressed by when I attended the Advertising Research Foundation's Audience Measurement 8.0 conference, which they entitled as a theme, Measuring the Unmeasured, which I think we all realize is a big challenge these days. It happened in mid-June at the New York Marriott Marquis, and there was really a lot to learn. And so, you know, what is the ARF? The ARF is an association where practitioners from every avenue of advertising, academia, agency, marketer, media, and research gather to exchange ideas and research strategies. The important thing that distinguishes them, the ARF, from many of the other, in fact all of the other leading advertising research and marketing research associations around the world, is that their main goal is the pursuit of smarter, more effective marketing communications for business growth. In other words, if the research doesn't have a practical application for business, then the ARF is not interested. That is their focus, and it does make them a much more unique and relevant organization for the needs of our industry. It is a fully tripartite organization in the United States. So I'm going to also briefly introduce Brandon Burr, but he will pop in a little later. Brandon Burr of ComScore has volunteered to discuss his part of this presentation, the study that he himself commissioned, and we're going to welcome him a little later. So let's move on here. The contents of the presentation, as I mentioned, a great selection of best of nuggets on digital media and cross-platform learning. We're going to focus on 12 key papers from the 40 that were presented. They were presented, all of them, of course, by leading agencies, media owners, and research companies, some of them IAB members, and I'm going to ask you all to keep alert for that little postage stamp-sized IAB Canada logo that you might just see on the right of the screen, because that will denote those companies that are members of IAB Canada, and we want to thank them in advance. And so let's get started. We're going to be covering a study that's social media focused, 7 studies on cross-platform learning, a study on connected TV, and 3 studies on marketing effectiveness. Rules of engagement for the webinar. Everyone is going to be muted. There will be no Q&A. It just simply won't be possible to get through all the content otherwise. But if you'll notice in the bottom right corner of my screen, your screens, we're going to distribute the PDF of this webinar right after the webinar ends, or shortly thereafter, possibly tomorrow at the latest. And as you can also see, I'm sure you will all have questions of some sort. Feel free to take down my email address. It's shown in the bottom right, and send me your questions, and we'll be more than happy to get back to you. That said, let's start with social media, and this study, which was underwritten by the Council for Research Excellence, which in turn is funded by Nielsen, and to which many large media-owning companies are involved. And this study about the effects of social TV and the impact on viewer engagement. And again, you'll notice the little postage stamp-sized IAB Canada logo right next to the Nielsen logo, because all of those companies in that orange box were involved in this study. And so importantly, the report points out that social TV, in other words, the use of social media to discuss or interact regarding television content, is quite small compared to other forms of communication. Only about 12% of people online do this daily, but that grows to about 37% over the course of a week. And of that 37% who engage in social TV, or in other words, the use of social media in terms of TV content. That's split roughly equally between those who are actually at that moment concurrently watching television while they're discussing it through social media, and those who are actually not concurrently watching TV. They may in fact be talking about it after the fact or beforehand, but not during. And this was very, very interesting that when you compare when you look at the percent of people interacting with television, this is on the left-hand side, one or more times in an average day, and on the right side, one or more times in the typical week. And then if you compare the proportion of the total public that does that as compared to what is referred to as in the study as the TV super connectors, you'll see a dramatic difference. And of course, you'll see this in just about any line of media exposure or usage. There is going to be a heavy user. And so on a daily basis, 12% of the total public online will engage, will interact with TV one or more times in an average day through social media, whereas 27% of the TV super connectors will do that. The mustard-colored bars are the total public. The gray bars are the TV super connectors, which for some reason they chose to make red in looking at social media. Very, very interesting. You can also see the dominance of word of mouth, which is referred to here as offline communication. Let's look at cross-platform. We have quite a stack of research studies to go through, and I think maybe you can begin to understand why we won't be able to do Q&A. That's why I want you to feel free to email me, srosenblum@iabcanada.com, with any questions. Let's start with the study that was conducted by the Media Behavior Institute, which is a for-profit entity in the States, and in conjunction with the 10th Avenue Agency and Nielsen, which is a member of IAB Canada. This learning comes from the USA Touchpoint study, which is a unique study in the United States, modeled after a similarly unique study called Touchpoints in the UK. And basically, in both countries, it's the only nationally projectable study of an individual consumer's life over the course of a week, because essentially what they're doing is, with a smartphone app, they are checking in half hour by half hour every day over a full week as to where they are. Of course, that's helped by the use of GPS, social setting, what they're doing, the media they're being exposed to, and how they're feeling at the time. It's a unique study that is ongoing in the U.S. and U.K. And as a result, just as an example of the kinds of things you can do, it clearly enables you to get a good sense of on-the-go exposure to on-the-go video, which is defined as all video content consumed across any device outside the home. Live TV, mobile, tablets, computers, place-based digital video, kiosks, etc. And here's what they've learned over the course of 2 or 3 years that USA Touchpoints has been in place. And the purple overlay from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. with weekly reach on the vertical bar, you can see how substantial that purple overlay is of out-of-home or on-the-go video exposure. Certainly not captured by current currency measures. Obviously, that being the reason for the need for a study of this sort. Moving on, I will have to say, unfortunately, Media Behavior Institute has, as of the end of July, will be shutting down. They just simply weren't able to generate the revenue that they needed. There was always a wide-scale acceptance of the value and legitimacy of USA Touchpoints. It's just that they weren't able to get enough business going. Touchpoints is still underway and nationally used in the UK and well entrenched. Let's move on to Project Blueprint, which I think is essentially blowing everybody away. It's all about an ESPN and fully funded by the parent organization. And back in September 2012, ESPN first announced Project Blueprint, which was essentially set up to provide them with complete cross-platform measurement of all of their co-branded properties, whether it be TV, of which they have several channels, digital on PC, smartphone, and tablet in terms of the websites, radio, and doing it on a hybrid basis with both single source and multiple streams of data that they have to integrate. And they, at the ARF this June, they did an update which essentially said, we're done. The job is in place, the infrastructure is there, and everything's functioning and validated. Essentially, all of this entire chart is about how they're addressing duplication and where they're getting their data from. And so in the top left, they're getting their TV and radio exposure data from the portable or personal people meter through Arbitron's panel of 70,000 in the U.S. We have the same meter in place here in Canada, but of course it's not part of the study. They're also measuring media usage and duplication between TV and PC. This is on the top right, via ComScore panelists within set-top box subscriber households. And those are, I believe those are AT&T set-top box subscribers. Then they've got another panel, which is a subset of that panel, measuring duplication between TV, PC, smartphone, and tablet usage. And then they've got also census or machine measurement of PC, smartphone, and tablet usage within the active ComScore Mediametrics multi-platform service that's in place in the United States. And then the calibration panel in the bottom left, its purpose is to establish duplication between broadcast on the left and digital on the right. And there, it's fully in place, and the purpose of this whole endeavor is to provide the best possible data to the advertisers. And work in progress, I've just added that in on the bottom right. They're the only duplication studies they're finalizing now are TV versus radio and radio versus digital. Everything else is done. And they're going to then move on to program-level reporting as opposed to the platform reporting. And then they'll move into campaign and commercial measurement. So it's an astounding and amazing endeavor, very expensive, and highly regarded. And what they've learned, just an example from some of the February data that they shared at the conference, was that the more digital devices that you use to watch ESPN, the longer you're going to spend with ESPN. There's a direct relationship there. Again, it shouldn't be a big surprise because the heavier users of various media will have more devices, and one leads to the other. But this was the whole rationale for them making this massive investment, was to be able to produce this kind of learning for their advertisers. We're going to move on now to a study spearheaded by the ABC TV network in the U.S. I'm sure you're all aware of that advertising-supported national broadcast network in the U.S. In a study they did through GFK, the research house. Their business issues were that they, as is the case for just about practically any large broadcast and or cable entity in the United States, the total reach of ABC programming has not been defined across platforms. They need to arrive at that. They need to prove that advertising on multiple ABC platforms increases advertising effectiveness. and they need to be able to profile the cross-platform viewer as for what it is, which is their highest value audience. And so they commissioned an online survey through GfK, and the kinds of questions that they asked essentially dealt with yesterday and past 3 days of viewing of ABC TV by any device, as well as sponsor and advertiser awareness and usage. And a summary of their findings. On an average day, alternative platforms add 27% to the ABC TV-only audience, and that's the chart, in the pie chart in the bottom right, TV-only being 79%, and the difference being generated by exposure to other devices. And importantly, 21% over 79% is that 27% lift that or expansion they're talking about. As you can see, mobile is really very, very marginal, mobile viewing. The real contributors from the other devices are PCs and people who are exposed to or using TV and PC. Mobile is still really in early days. Cross-platform viewers had higher recall and more favorable attitudes towards advertisers than TV-only viewers, and skewed male and younger, essentially their sweet spot. Moving on to another study, and I'm going to unmute Brandon Burr, who I want to welcome. Brandon was very interested in taking part and discussing this study. And so I'm going to ask Brandon to briefly background the study, and he can then take us through some of the findings. Go ahead, Brandon.
Thanks, Steve, for letting me take a couple minutes and just take everybody through the summary here of the research we did with PayPal. So this is something that Comscore did in conjunction with PayPal. This study is looking specifically at online shoppers and their use across the multiple devices throughout their shopping experience. The research consisted of leveraging both Comscore's behaviorally tracked panels and census data along with a custom survey component that we were able to bring together and really come up with some interesting findings. So if you want to advance the slide one click there, Steve.
I will.
Perfect. The main point that...
I'm having a problem here. It's not responding. Just a moment. There we go.
Perfect. So the main point that I really want everyone to walk away with today from this specific piece of this presentation is that cross-device shopping is very common out there. It is something that consumers are expecting to be able to do and really expecting to have a seamless, continuous experience across these devices. So what that means for all of us is that we really need to pay attention to synchronizing our strategies across these devices and making that consistent experience that can be complementary to experience on other devices. So diving into the data a little bit, go ahead, Steve, with the slide there. You'll see the first point that I want to speak on a second here is just something that surprised me when I looked at it. The time spent on online retail, when you divide that up between your traditional PC visitors and mobile visitors, it's really almost a 50-50 split, which is pretty significant if you've been paying attention to mobile retail at all, because the dollars spent for mobile devices is only about 11%, which is pretty good, but compared to 50-50, there's a big difference. So this really speaks to the fact that even though they aren't as much of a dollar side, there is a lot of significance that these mobile devices are playing in the whole landscape of online retail and advertising and all of it. Diving deeper into that, you see here, this is more traditional, what we think of as showrooming. 34% of the mobile buyers bought their on their mobile devices while they're actually in the store. However, if we go to the next piece there, Steve, much of the time that is actually spent shopping on these devices is still taking place at home. So 9 out of 10 online shoppers are doing so from home. When we look specifically just at the smartphone owners on their smartphone device, it was 34% of them, which is coincidentally the same number that we're doing the showrooming. That grows a little bit when we start looking at the tablet devices, up to 55%. So even though these devices are mobile, people are still using them in their homes for shopping. When we asked the respondents in the survey portion of this to kind of rate their experience with the purchasing on a scale of favorability, it was really interesting to see that the desktop laptop machines and tablet machines really rated the best. They beat out an in-store experience for having that favorable purchase experience. This says a lot for the growth of the industry and how people are looking at online shopping versus in-store shopping. And the really interesting thing here is those big screens, as the title says, are beating out that in-store experience. If you've got the size and the platform to do it on, people enjoy it. The final point that I just want to touch on here, I think really brings this all together. You'll see that 67% there. That's over two-thirds of online shoppers that we looked at in this study are shopping across devices, and you can see some of the breakouts there. Some of the most interesting breakouts there are the one on the far right. You'll see from in-store to PC shopping, 67% of the respondents said that they were participating in that, going into the store, and then finally making that purchase online, which is a traditional showrooming. The thing that really stood out and was interesting was now the point on the far left is the opposite of that. People that are starting online, shopping online, but then ultimately going into the store to make the purchase. So that was something that really came out of this research, of that it is a two-way street, and as such, as advertisers and retailers and so on, it's very important that we understand that and look at this landscape in that way, that consumers are flowing between these devices. So with that, Steve, I can turn it back over to you.
Thanks so much, Brandon. We really appreciate your being available. We were thrilled when we discovered you were willing to do this and appreciative. And I want to mention, of course, that ComScore is a member of IAB Canada, and we're showing that little postage stamp IAB logo next to every company involved in research that we're discussing against any company that's a member of IAB Canada. So that said, and that was a very interesting study, sponsored or commissioned by PayPal. I'd like to take you on now to another study, another multi-screen study. The main objective here of the Bravo networks, which are owned by NBC in the States, NBC Universal, was to try to arrive at whether multi-screen does move the needle across the purchase funnel for multi-level sponsors. And the show that, and the sponsorship they looked at was Toyota's new Prius with their Top Chef series, the Last Chance Kitchen stream of shows in that series. And Toyota was involved on a multiplicity of levels, as you can see, with Top Chef, Last Chance Kitchen. There is a digital video series, or in other words, webisodes. There was on-air live voting. There was content product placement. There was tweeting and traditional media exposure and fan loyalty and at all levels. And as is the case now for all significant research studies that are occurring in the United States, basically many different suppliers, research suppliers, and research or we'll call them big data streams are being used in order to study cross-platform. And you can see that NBC brought in Nielsen IAG and Dynamic Logic and Omniture and RentTrack, whose specialty is advertising through addressable set-top boxes in cable systems, and Keller-Fay Group, whose specialty is word of mouth, and another company in the social media area whose specialty is sentiment, called General Sentiment, interestingly. Just make sure we're able to move on here. And an example of the learning that came from the dynamic logic learning was that moving lower funnel metrics, especially with large purchases, is often a time-intensive process involving multiple interactions with consumers. And in this chart, you can see along the bottom is frequency of exposure to advertising, and then the curves are for TV in mustard, webisodes in red, and banners, online banners in blue. And you can see how the additional frequency in each case results in a growth in purchase consideration. But it appears to be steepest for the webisode sponsorships. And so that says a lot for the rise in the use of online video. And another element of the learning about purchase consideration was that Top Chef viewers exposed the same number of times have higher purchase consideration when they are exposed on a combination of touch points. And you can see here that based on a similar frequency of exposure, those who were exposed to TV only, about 64% of them achieved or recorded as having achieved purchase consideration, whereas 70% of those who were exposed to TV and online arrived at purchase consideration. I hope everybody's heads aren't spinning as I just go from one study to the next, but this is supposed to be a quick learn experience. This study, commissioned by Campbell, and they conducted this with a big data analytics company in the States called IRI, was another study looking at the ROI of cross-platform advertising strategies. And in this case, the hypothesis that Campbell's was working with and wanted to prove to itself was that audience engagement is enhanced at points of overlap across platforms. In other words, the sweet spot, the achievement of synergy against individuals exposed to paid, owned, earned, and social media. And once again, as discussed earlier, they are using multiple data streams. Of course, you have to if you're going to look at cross-platform, and that means multiple suppliers of data streams for television, for online display, for paid search, for earned organic search, for print, for weekly branded site traffic data, for historical sales reflecting brand equity. And this was all then modeled to predict the percent change in consumption of the products in question as a result of media exposure. Here is how the modeling produced results, which Campbell's was quite happy with, apparently. And you can see from this pie that TV was in green at 18%, was the single largest media driver of purchase probability, but all other media, and that would be the 25%, added to more than TV cumulatively. So print advertising accounted for about 6 points of that 25%. All the rest was digital. And when we move on to a study that was commissioned by Starcom MediaVest Group, once again, a member of IAB Canada, in this experiment with cross-platform measurement and effectiveness, once again, they worked with multiple research companies to look at commercial exposure, social commentary, attitudinal impact, shopper measurement, and so on. And here's what they learned. That and the focus in that I only have time really to share one of the 3 cases with you that they shared. This one about consumer packaged goods, and it's the differential media impact on sales. That when they compare digital-only exposure ad exposure as compared to TV-only ad exposure, that television seemed to do the best job in terms of driving sales from new customers, consisting of those new to the category and those new to the brand. Whereas digital only seemed to do the best job in the green segment of the bar, which was achieving more sales from current customers. But it's interesting to me that when you look at those customers who were new to the category, it seems to me from this chart that digital did every bit as well or a little better than television here for Campbell's as well. That the real advantage for TV was from those who were new to the brand, not new to the category. Now, this I think you're going to find extremely interesting. It's all about the connected TVs that are out there, and there's very little learning really about how people are using them and their effectiveness. And of course, as you all know, connected TVs or smart TVs are TVs that allow you to connect it to both the cable system and to the internet. And this study was commissioned by Turner Broadcasting, and Interscope Research was the company that did the work, and the agency involved was Zenith, which is part of Zenith Optimedia, again, a member of IAB Canada. And again, before I get into the study, I want to remind everybody on the bottom right, the PDF will be distributed after the webinar. You're welcome to direct any questions to me, Steve Rosenblum, Director of Research. There's my email address. Let's get into the learning here. Now, this was all about ACR, and that means Automatic Content Recognition. It's an app that gets placed on the smart or connected TV, and through that app, it is possible for the content provider, let's say it's Turner Broadcasting's TNT network, it's possible for them to identify those homes that are actually what content homes that are watching their stations are watching, and to be able to serve up through the web appropriate, relevant overlay communications. And this kind of app, ACR, that is, can be in effect put on any device, and so you can get the idea of how a truly converged cable and online experience can be. And so the kinds of sponsored automatic content recognition interactions that they looked at were in the top left. They're sharing. You can see in the red boxes where they placed the overlays. Sharing a snippet of video, a coupon that you could apply for, sign up for, a sweepstakes you could participate in, a fact that you could pass on to others. The company, it was actually a division of Time Warner, which Turner is, the Media Lab, through which all of this research was coordinated. And the study results that we're going to show you here are the results of eye-tracking heat maps of the ACR overlays on smart TV screens, overlaid, again, as I say, over the broadcast content that it has been served up to. Essentially the learning was that the eye tracking indicates, if you look at the red areas, those are the heat maps reflecting where the concentration of eyes and attention were, that wherever these overlays were positioned, that's where the eyes went. And so this was a very specific kind of research to make sure that they were designing the overlays properly, they were being positioned in the right places, and Lord knows there is a lot more research to be done, and Turner has done a lot of research and is committed to doing a lot more in order to get ready to start selling advertising and communications on this cross-platform basis. Now let's move on to the topic of marketing effectiveness, specifically as relates to native advertising, and also the issue of viewability. So let's start with native advertising, a new media category or just a new buzzword. Again, the two companies, Sharethrough and IPG, which is Interpublic Group, a member of IAB Canada, and interesting work that was done. This is experimental because it's very early days, and again, just like connected TVs, there is a lot of work being done in this area in native advertising, and a lot more work that has to be done. And as you can see, they began their presentation by acknowledging and emphasizing the challenges in measuring native ad effectiveness. These are multiple custom formats with a wide variety of additional functions. So you can see that little white strip there in what is supposedly a web page, that being an example of a native ad. These are content-based ads that are integrated with the surrounding environment. You can see on the right the listing of all of the elements that can comprise a native ad. And so measuring native ads requires advanced technology. Here's another example that I found when I was just looking for other examples through the web. An example from Entrepreneur of a native ad. 4 communication trends small business need to save money and expand business. Here's another example from Mashable. This man makes data look beautiful. Just to give you another better sense of native advertising. And the IPG Media Lab essentially conducted an online survey consisting of a 3-tiered exposure to a number of different examples that they designed. This is what you would call a laboratory study, where they designed web pages and advertising content and so on. And the 3-tiered exposure meant that for each of these constructed web pages, they first exposed the respondent to the overall web page view. Then they had the respondent focus in on the video view of the web page, and then they served up a click map where they asked the respondent to click on any portion of the website that they liked, which would then turn it green, and any portion they didn't like to click and make it red. And as a result of this, they were able to lend some truth, if you will, to their hypothesis that native ads have a stronger impact on branding metrics than banner ads. In other words, that the better ad experience offered by native ads translated into more persuasive advertising. And so if we look at the lift in purchase intent, for example, banners having achieved a 39% lift and native ads having achieved a 44% lift, it's a 52% lift that is on top of that red bar. What that means is that compared to the control group who were not exposed to native ads, who had a 29% purchase intent, those who were exposed had a 44% purchase intent. That's 52% lift, just to help you if you were wondering where those figures came from. So that was quite interesting. And moving on now to viewability, John Fulgoni, the chairman of ComScore, yet another IAB member, IAB Canada member, this was very interesting because you may recall back when they launched Validated Campaign Essentials, they made available a charter study. This is the U.S. charter study consisting of 18 campaigns confined to blue-chip sponsor advertisers and premium publishers only. And they discovered that 69% of ads that they were able to measure were in view, as compared to 31% that weren't in view, and the definition being 50% or more of the ad being visible 1 second or longer. Well, that was what they had discovered when they first launched Validated Campaign Essentials, but when they started doing benchmarking studies in 2013, would have been the first year for that, they went to what they called the real-world scenario as opposed to what they had done previously, which was a best-case scenario. And here, they looked at a mix of advertisers and a mix of publishers, not just premium publishers, and the result was a considerably lower in-view rate of 46% rather than 69%. And so they wanted to share that, and so that the recognition of the challenge is even clearer to us all. The other thing that I think we all want and shouldn't be surprised by was this information that Kellogg's allowed them to publish, which was that higher in-view delivery of ad impressions results in dramatic increases in sales lift. And so for Kellogg's, using VCE to optimize their buy towards viewability, a 40% improvement in viewability generated 75% increase in sales impact. And I don't think that should surprise anybody. I'm hoping that we're going to see some data for Canada one of these days, and I look forward to similar kinds of results. So to wrap up, let's summarize that in terms of content related, what we've learned today is the greater the involvement with TV content, the greater the word of mouth through multiple channels, including social media. No surprise there. And of course, there are the super heavy communicators there. On-the-go viewing on any device is substantial in prime time for many target groups. In combination, alternative digital platforms can add more than 25% to a broadcast network's TV-only audiences. That's the ABC example. We also learned from ESPN that the more digital devices that one uses in order to watch ESPN vehicles, the more digital media time spent. And of course, this is really translatable to the broader advertising industry. Nielsen themselves reported this from their cross-platform household panel down in the States, and that this kind of learning really kind of applies across the board is what they had found. And from an advertising perspective, while TV is the largest single driver of purchase probability, a combination of digital channels can do better. Indeed, viewers exposed the same number of times can have higher purchase consideration if based on a combination of touch points. Also, TV is able to drive more CPG sales from new brand customers, while digital media can have greater impact on current customers and equal impact to TV on new-to-category customers. Automatic content recognition interactions for brand sponsors are visually well attended to on connected TVs, and that has clear implications for the use of these apps on all screen devices. Native advertising is highly complex, but from preliminary work that's been done, referred to as experimental by Interpublic Group's Media Lab, it may in fact have stronger impact on brand metrics than banner ads. Boosting in-view ad impressions can dramatically increase sales lift, as one would hope. Cross-device shopping at home or elsewhere is common, so synchronize your marketing communication strategy across all devices and locations. That's obviously from the ComScore learning. Our thanks again to Brandon Burr. Not surprisingly, established currencies find it hard to keep up with the rapid rate of digital media and advertising developments on the ground. That's why all of these studies are being done and shared at the ARF. And the holy grail of pure single-source measurement of cross-platform usage and effectiveness has given way, basically, as a goal to a more realistic recognition that we are going to have to work with multiple data streams and to deal with the issues of duplication through specially designed single-source calibration panels where all devices are present. Simply because that's the only way we can get the granularity of learning that we're going to need. Anything short of a 1 million sample panel it would be inadequate, essentially, in order to act as a currency for cross-platform learning, is what we've learned from studies done by the Coalition for Innovative Media Measurement, CIM. I want to thank everybody for joining us today for these digital and cross-media highlights of the ARF conference last June, just a few weeks ago. I want to thank you for attending and listening in, and I hope that you will all direct your questions to me directly. You can see once again my email there. You can expect to receive this PDF shortly. And I also want to thank all of the IAB Canada member companies that were part of the research that we've shared with you today. So to everybody, a great rest of the week, and I look forward to hearing from you.